I row since I was 4 years old with my grandpa. It's like walking, and it's like to ride a bicycle, because by oar you can cross the city very quickly also if you want, and leaving Venice from the best point of view, because Venice was projected to be rowed, no? And all the canals, you have the most important point of view. And very important, you can enjoy the environment, the lagoon of Venice.
Hi, this is Sarah with another episode of Materially Speaking, where artists and artisans tell their stories through the materials they choose. Sound specialist Mike Axinn and I are in Venice for a special series, meeting 3 young artisans who learnt their skills over many years and are now bringing a fresh energy to the community. They all have a keen eye on repair, reuse and sustainability. First we're meeting Piero Dri, a remer who makes oars and oarlocks, or as the Italians call them, forcolai. Venice, of course, is a world without cars. Water laps at our side as we walk, and as we pause at the top of a bridge, wide waterways stretch to our left and right, and palaces loom high, each marked with striped canal poles. There's a boat loaded with building supplies holding wood, wheelbarrows and a cement mixer. Another, with a raised mechanical platform, is awaiting a coffin. There are slow boats with workmen chatting, slick, fast boats with tourists taking photos, and of course, gondolas. Piero's vibrant personality has earned him the name of the mad forcolai maker, so his workshop is called Il Forcolaio Matto. As we arrive, he's opening up his shop, hooking flower boxes onto his windowsill and leaning a red and white striped oar against the wall. Inside are workbenches and saws, wood samples and glue, and centrally a large wooden clamp on which the forcolai is shaped. There's a healthy deposit of wood shavings on the floor. From the ceiling hang varnished oars, and displayed in one window are decorative forcolai in a variety of gorgeous woods which hold their own as art objects. I asked Piero to introduce himself.
My name is Piero Dri, is a short name, and I am an oar maker. In Venetian, we call this craftwork remer. Remer because remo is the oar. And it's one of the most ancient jobs still active in Venice, because officially it's born in 1307, and everything in Venice was based on rowing, no? So the oar makers were very, very important also in the past. They made the big oars for the galeras, for the big ships built in the Arsenale area, no? You know that the Venetians were able to make one ship per day, and because the Arsenale is the first example of working chain. Everybody had a specific skill, a specific rule in the Arsenale. So if you think that every galea had 40 oars, as long as this room, you can imagine there were a lot of people working there and a lot of oar makers. And then there were another kind of oar makers working outside the Arsenale and around the city of Venice, and producing the smaller oars and the forcola, so the oarlocks, for the traditional smaller Venetian boats. The forcola is something special in Venice because it existed only in Venice. It is the Venetian oarlock, the rowlock for the Venetian traditional boats. Is the wooden object where the gondolier, the rower, places the oar to drive the boat, to control the boat in all the directions. No?
What is a sandalo?
Sandalo is a very simple boat, very used by the people in the past to move around Venice, also to carry something. And there are different models of sandalo depending on where it was built. Sometimes in Burano So the sandolo buraneo from Burano is bigger than the normal sandolo. Usually it can go from 6 meters and half till 8 meters, 8 meters and half. And you can see it for touristical use. The black one boat that is not a gondola. No, sometimes you can see a smaller and flatter boat, and the rower stays inside of the boat, not over the boat like on the gondola. This is like a sort of this. This is Mascareta. This is a very light model.
What is it made of?
This is a model in large.
In large. Okay.
Large, but usually these kind of boats are in spruce wood, large wood, and the skeleton is in oak or elm, so a bit stronger. No, nowadays the boat maker uses usually plywood and marine plywood, obviously, for the bottom and the side. Okay. Also on the gondola, so you can take the boat also out of the water for a long time. Instead, in the past, it was impossible because with the sun, without water, it cracks. It dries a lot and it can crack. No? So the boat must be in the water in the past. No?
Cool. Well, can we go back? Where were you born?
Here in Venice in 1983. And I always lived in Venice. I rode since I was 4 years old with my grandpa. It's like walking, and it's like to ride a bicycle, because by oar you can cross the city very quickly also if you want, and leaving Venice from the best point of view, because Venice was projected to be road, no? And all the canals, you have the most important point of view. And very important, you can enjoy the environment, the lagoon of Venice. I remember also during the teenage, when I was teenager, sometimes I escape away from from home, and always by rowing, no? And I went to the lagoon trying to sleep in the night away from everybody, because I like to be with myself in silence and with the nature and so on. So it's a very important part of me, of course. I studied then at university in Padova, 40 kilometers from Venice, but always coming and going and coming every day, you know. So I always lived in Venice. Now, since 4 years, I live in Murano Island.
What did you study at Padua?
I studied astronomy. I am graduated in astronomy. And during the last 2 years of university, I began to feel something strange in me, and I needed to come back to the real Venice, because in my opinion, if you live closer to the Venetian soul, you can love Venice. If you live looking only at the bad sides of living in Venice, because living in Venice is also very difficult sometimes, at the end you risk to hate the city, no? And many people go away. So I felt that I was losing something. I was losing this very strong relationship with the city, and I felt the need to come back to my passion, that's rowing, that's wood. And the only way to put them together was to learn or to make boats. And at the end, I started to make forcolais and oars.
Was it in your family? Do you have craftsmen in your family? Is it a family tradition?
No, it's not a family tradition. My brother is 4 years younger than me, but he didn't study at the university, and he worked after the secondary school directly on a boat yard making gondolas. So for 12 years he made gondolas, and so I don't know if I would like to follow him or to learn to make gondolas too. But at the end, I understood that wasn't my way. And in this work, I found the best mirror of my character, because making forcola, I can put together the technical elements, the technical details, because forcolai has to be functional as first. But I'm also free to express myself from the artistical point of view. So I feel free to put together these two elements that are the same elements of my character. I'm very precise for some things, and I studied the scientific subjects. No, so in this way, this is my thinking way. But at the same time, I constantly need to be free.
Is Venice a free sort of society, place to live?
Not for the 100%. It's not easy to live in a sort of bowl. I don't know. Sometimes I think it's right to build a bowl, your personal sphere in the Venetian society. Sometimes I think that it's completely wrong because it's very fundamental, the relationship between the humans and so on. But nowadays, to live in Venice, you need to have your balance and to go on to look to some details that the normal life tends to delete. So this is the challenge. We live in a very touristical city that the Venetian environment is very weak. And if you love to live in Venice, you love Venice. And so you must do something for it.
And do you have a lot of family around? Do you bump into your brother?
Yeah, I have all my family. I have 3 brothers younger than me, parents and my girlfriend, everything. Yes, yeah. I'm lucky because I go on living my family dimension, even if we are 4 brothers during the years at the end, no? Many times we go to the mountains all together, and so it's a luck for me.
Do the others work in? So one is makes gondolas.
Not anymore. Now he's just a wood carpenter now. Always craft work, but just with wood. And in Venice is very funny because everything in the houses it's tailor made, no? Because the angles of the houses they are never 90 degrees or everything, no? So if you order a new kitchen, you have to call a carpenter and not go to IKEA, come si dice. And so, yes, it's fun. Another is a flower designer. Florist. He's studying flower designer. And the fourth is environmental engineer. Is finishing the studies in Padua.
Are there any other people who make the oarlocks?
Yeah, I have my colleagues. We are 4 workshops in Venice and 5 people because we are all alone except one workshop where they are 2. And we are friends because Venice is very small. For some details, we have different ways to look to our job. Of course, there's my master, still active, Paolo Brandolisio. And I recognize, of course, that I learned from him. So my personal view is is also his view, no, on the forcolai, on the craft work in general. But I'm developing during the years my personal style, maybe, or because when you are artisan, your character comes to the final object.
How did you meet your master?
In 2006, my girlfriend of the epoch pushed me in his workshop because I was looking for something to connect me again to the real Venice. I went inside this workshop and I asked if there was the possibility to learn. The answer was no. And so I turned around. I was get out of the workshop, and while I was closing the door, my master said me, "But if you want to try some hours someday," and so I started to learn to touch the wood to impress in my mind the forcolai shape. I remember that when I went home in the evening, I tried to draw it, to fix it in my mind. And day by day, we both understood that we could evolve this very particular relationship, and it's another luck I think I had, because the relationship between the master and the pupil is something very, very particular that this society is losing, in my opinion. And it's something very, very important, because you have to respect your master, but a nice master is able to respect the pupil always, because the workshop becomes your personal home. So being a master is not simple, because you have to share it, and you need a guy, a person who wants to share it with you and respecting it. So it's not so simple to find. But when you find the balance and the agreement, is perfect.
And how long did you work with or learn with him before you set up on your own?
I've been there almost 7 years, 6, 7 years. And after 4 or 5 years, you have a 360 degrees view of the work. And then, of course, you have the final step. That's when you are alone in front of the log. Because the first steps of making a forcola are always made by the master, no, in his workshop, because he has to decide some details. When you are alone, you have to make this last step. If you pass it, you have the work in your hands, definitely.
So apart from technical skills, what did you learn from your master?
I think that the most important things was the behavior, the relationship with the client, because in Venice, working, for example, for the gondoliers, you have to joke always, because joking you are working. I don't know. Sometimes I go rowing with my boat, and my master has a small boat too. And so rowing around Venice, some gondoliers tell, "Hey, I have an oar to repair. I have a forcolai to repair." So it's a strange work, because it's part of the city, no? And you must be faithful for the master teachings, because at the end they are the real way to reach the aim and the goal, no? And so this behavior to be always faithful is very important.
You're still in touch with your master. You would ask his advice.
Yes, of course, we are friends. We always share messages and so on. And for a long period, if I had some doubts, any doubts, I always ask to him before making, because you never finish to learn.
I love the fact that the gondolas will tell you'll just get the business because you're out there rowing. Who else are your clients? Who else do you work for?
I make oars for all Venice, all the Venice Rowing Society. I'd like to go on making the traditional work at the service of the city. So I make oars for rowing, because I believe in rowing in Venice, no? So I work for gondoliers, but for all the other Venetians who row. For the racers, because we have a sort of rowing championship during the summer season. And sometimes I make oars and forcolas also for the gondoliers around the world. There are some rowing clubs in Europe, but also in the States. Last year I shipped some oars to Perth in Australia, because other guys fell in love with Venice with this particular rowing style.
I wanted to find out what different types of oars there are, because presumably what a gondolier uses is not what you use when you race.
It's like a pair of shoes, because you have different kind of shoes for every occasion. And specifically, we have different oars for different Venetian boats, according to the size of the boat and to the use you do of that specific boat. And when you are making an oar, you have to meet the preferences of the rower, because somebody prefers a softer oar, somebody another one, and sometimes an heavier one for the windy days, for example. And there are some differences. Of course, an oar becomes your personal oar after some months you use it, you go on using it, because and in this sense it's like a pair of shoes, no? Because when they are new, they are for everybody, no? But with the daily use, they become your shoes, no? They take your walking style, no? And the same for the oar. So it's very, very important to take care of the oar and to repair it. So part of my work is always to the repairing operation, and I go to take off the broken or the worn part of the oar, and I replace it with other slice of wood. I make again the right line for the hydrodynamical move.
When you row a certain way,
Uh-huh.
you use different bits of the oar.
Yeah, the Venetian oar is very complicated if you want, because during the Venetian rowing style, the paddle has always to be under the water line if you are rowing alone, because you are rowing only on the right part, on the right side of the boat, no? So when you push forward, the boat tends to go to the left, and then you have to correct the direction in some way, no? And the way is on the coming back move. With the paddle under the water line, you turn it on the other side, and you go braking a bit, making the opposite move respect to when you are pushing.
What are the choices of woods for oars?
For oars, it's a difficult question, because since 60s, more or less, 1960, the oars are not in beech wood anymore, like in the past, because Venetians took the beech trees from the closest mountains here, or from Istria, Dalmatia, all the eastern part of Europe. And so we glue spruce wood of the finest quality without branches, knots. And the two blades, we call them the knives, because the two edges of the paddle go cutting the water, no? So for us are the cortei, the knives. And these two elements are in beechwood nowadays too, because beechwood is more resistant, and when with the paddle you go against another boat or the wall of a palace around the canals in Venice, it lasts more time. The length of these two knives is not similar, but one is shorter than the other. One, because you have to recognize the oar to be used on the left or on the right side of the boat. So the shorter knife goes always toward the back of the boat.
And varnish, what is it covered with?
There are a couple of coats of oil, linseed oil, and then usually three coats of varnish for water. I usually put the first coat with the polyurethanic varnish, and the second ones with synthetic. Yeah, it's always synthetic. It's not it's not natural varnish. It's impossible to.
I know, I can imagine.
Yeah, no. The research in the water based varnish is very active. But for the marine world, it's very difficult nowadays to have a perfect flatting for a resistant one, water resistant. Part of my job is also to fit perfectly the forcola on every specific boat, and so it must be a very strong object, and the different surfaces of the object allow the gondolier to place the oar on different positions to control the boat always. So there are, for example, in the case of the forcola for the gondola, there are 6-7 different positions where the gondolier can place the oar. And so when I make a forcola, there are some measures to take. There are some angles to consider, because also the boats are always different. The gondola seems to be all similar, but they are handmade too, no? And so every time they are different, depending on who made them. And so many times I have to go, when I finish the forcola, I have to go to the yard. When the gondola is finished, I fit the leg of the forcola. We call the leg on the forcola the lower part that we fix inside of the boat, no? And it has to be perfect, because without any wedge or any screw, the forcola has to remain fixed. But at the same time, every morning and every evening, the gondolier take it off from the gondola, and he replaces it in a secret box or at home for the night.
Why is that?
To preserve the forcola from the night, from the weather, bad weather conditions, for example, but also against the steel of the forcola. Because without forcola on a boat, on a Venetian boat, you are completely lost. Because, for example, here in Gran Canal, the water is quite calm, but in San Marco Bay, in front of San Marco, there are a lot of waves due to the motorboats, due to the wind, and so the legs, the gondolier's legs, will be a bit lower, and the forcola will be lower, will be a bit different from the forcola used here in Santa Sofia, in Gran Canal. And so there are different elements to consider.
So the forcola, what woods do you make forcola from?
To make a forcola, I use for the 95% of the forcolas walnut wood. Generally, you can use a fruit tree. And so for this reason, sometimes I make a cherry wood forcola or a pear wood. Sometimes you can use, if you find it, apple or maple, this kind of wood, because, but walnut is the best, because we need very huge trees and a strong grain. But the fruit trees, the fruit trees, okay. The fruit trees have the particularity to have a very smooth grain, and so when the forcola wears out, it becomes very, very smooth, okay, without having a big hardness difference between the winter and the summer grain. It's because the winter and the summer grain have two different hardness. In the case of fruit trees, is not always the same, and so the oar can warn the forcola very homogeneously, and it remains very smooth.
What you're saying is that some woods, most woods, have a different texture in the winter than they do in the summer.
Yes, because when you look to the ring of a tree, usually the darker ones are the moment in the year when the tree grows less than the other. It grows more, and you will have a softer wood, no? So usually I need 60-70 centimeters of diameter, and they are around 1 century, more or less. 100 years, sometimes 100 years, 20 or 80 years. This is the size. So more or less we can say 1 centimeter per year.
So 90% are walnut, the others are some sort of fruit, yes?
Yes, usually due to my need to have big trees, it's not so simple to find a big apple. Okay, so sometimes I can find a nice cherry wood, if I find it, I can buy it, but the seasoning, for example, of cherry is a bit more difficult than the natural seasoning of walnuts, because cherry tends to crack more than walnuts. And I need always at least 2-3 years to dry the wood. And in this period, with the dry air stream on usually on this surface of the log, it can crack for 15-20 centimeters. No, so this is the reason, for example, why I always go cutting higher blocks than the real one.
So you need a bigger chunk of wood than you need for the forcola to allow for a little bit of wastage at the top when it's seasoning.
Yeah.
Well, they're very beautiful. They look a bit like an arm with an elbow bent. How tall are they?
It can go from 50 centimeters till 1 meter. For example, the front row in position on a gondola has a very small model of forcola because the gondolier is inside. For the gondola model, for example, the difference height range between a short and a tall man is around 7-8 centimeters. If you are 1 meter 90, you will have 54 centimeters high forcola. Sometimes it's 54, sometimes it's 47. Okay, so this is the range for the tailor-made.
Do they come to your shop? Do the gondoliers come in and say, hey, do a little of this, do a little of that?
Yes. Usually, very often they have maybe an old forcola to correct, speaking about the setup of the forcola. So sometimes they say, I prefer to have it a bit forward, a bit more angled. And this is the secret of every craft work at the end, because it's always a compromise, a balance between the artisan and the client, you know.
Can we talk about the artistic side? You said you have a freedom making the forcola.
Yes.
What do you do?
To make a thin forcola, okay, because my master made very thin forcola, and it was his style, more or less. With my daily work, I modify a bit because I don't like a forcola so much thin. Another colleague, in my opinion, makes forcola too much heavy, something baroque, and also on the lines, because sometimes, for example, here it goes straight. This is a forcola made by me 4 years ago. This line sometimes can be straight. Other masters can make it a bit round here, and so at the end you have this sensation of a heavier shape, in my opinion. Or this curve sometimes is too thick. Or here on the head, because we associate the forcola to a human body, no? So you have the leg, the elbow, and the head with the two noses, the bite because it bites the oar, and the ear to brake, to stop the gondola here. There's this channel here. That's my master's master signature in his workshop. So when I opened here my workshop, I asked to my master if I could make it also here, no? Because the school is the same. So I always make this channel as a signature of the forcola. This is a carving symbol of the gondolier, and so I carved it here to recognize to customize the forcola. It's a unique piece. I made another one for a client in in North Carolina, and I make a special edition one for her husband, and with a 61 because it was the 61st birthday of the husband. I joined a contest with this one. I don't know the result, yet, but the theme was the strength of nature, no? And the beauty of nature. So I started from the rubbish or the plastics that I collect in Sant'Erasmo Island in the lagoon. And then from the garbage, the nature grows up and you find all the different plants of the Venetian lagoon, no? To express the strength of nature. This is a reinterpretation of the forcola. And in this way, the forcola, for me, is the symbol of rowing, so is the symbol of a sustainable Venice, but it's also the symbol of the strength of nature, so the environment in this sense, no?
So you sell these forcola as artistic items,
Yes,
works of art?
Course. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, I place the forcola on a standing and I sell it as a sculpture. There's no difference between the sculpture and the forcola to be used because I want to sell the real forcola. Something similar to the forcola for me is not a forcola. So you can put it at home, but in the future, if you want to buy a Venetian boat, you could also use it.
Do you imagine that you may teach this craft to somebody else?
Of course, this is something that I have to think about very soon because after these 10 years, I'm starting to understand that I have to make another step in my career, if you want, in my life, in my way to look to my job. And it's very, very important to teach to somebody this one and to it's very difficult because sometimes you are at the limit between working running alone and have enough work for two people, but it's very difficult because you have to prepare something to do also for him that is learning, so you have to invest a lot of time and make a revolution on your working process. But I think I must do in few years. Do it.
That's fantastic.
Grazie.
Thank you so much. That was so brilliant. So thanks to Piero Dri. You can discover more about him on his website, ilforcolaimatto.it, or find him on Instagram at Il Forcolaio Matto. And thanks to you for listening. As with all episodes, you can find photographs of the work discussed on our website, materiallyspeaking.com, or on Instagram. If you're enjoying Materially Speaking, subscribe to our newsletter on our website so we can let you know when the next episode goes live.